Today we shall reflect on the theme love and service. We see that in a way, all of us are called to love and serve those who are around us. The act of service is said to be a unique kind of service to human beings that is given by God. And it is something that comes from within the heart, something that flows out of love and generosity. And in a way, today's readings invite us to be serviceable persons who love and do things out of generosity. A glance at the first reading of today tells us about the suffering servant. It speaks also of the care and concern that the Lord has for each and every one of us. We see that the suffering servant was formed and he was set as a light to the nations to save all from bondage. As we know, Christ was that suffering servant. He came, he took all our sins upon himself, and then even though he was pure, even though he hadn't done anything wrong, still he was put to death, and he accepted that so that we could be free from bondage. A glance at today's gospel tells us that love knows no bounds. Today in the gospel we see that Jesus came to Bethany, a place where he would like to meet his friends Martha, Mary and Lazarus. And here we see that Mary does something that only love can do. Her actions were motivated by love. As we are told that Lazarus was at the table with Jesus and Mary took the ointment, a quite costly one, and anointed the feet of Jesus and then wiped his feet with her hair. Now there's something very interesting to note here. In those days, a Jewish woman would never undo her hair in public. And therefore we see that Mary did something which a Jewish woman would never do in public. For a married woman to loosen her hair in public was a sign of immodesty. But here we see that for Mary, what counted the most was what came from her heart. And in our lives too, we see that if our actions come out of love, if our actions originate directly from our heart, then those become actions of service. But on the other hand, if we do something out of compulsion, if we do something for other ulterior motives, then we realize that there's no satisfaction in that kind of work that we do. Next, we also see that what Mary did brought sweetness both in the physical as well as the spiritual sense. Now it is said that the whole room was filled with the fragrance. And similarly, we see that when we do such good deeds in our lives, when we perform actions out of generosity and love, it also fills our own lives with this fragrance of joy, this fragrance of satisfaction and consolation. In a way, we see here that Judas Iscariot was concerned about the money being spent such lavishly for such a reason. And he says that the money could be easily given to the poor. Now, we are also told in the Gospel of John that Judas was a thief and that since he had control of the money box, he would take some things for himself. And here we see that Judas's action or Judas's concern is not governed by a real concern for the poor, but probably he would be having some ulterior motives. And that is why Jesus, being Jesus, knew exactly what was going through his mind. And therefore he tells him that let Mary do what she is doing. We then see that the Jews learned that he was there and they were trying and planning to kill Jesus. But we are told in today's gospel, not only Jesus, but also Lazarus, because Lazarus was a witness and a testimony. And similarly, we see that in our lives too, because we are witnesses of Jesus, we may have to face number of trials, number of persecutions, etc. Christians are facing it all over the world. But we see that the more rooted, the more grounded we are in the love of Christ, the more grace we will get to resist this, and the more consolation and joy we will get in doing the act of service out of love and generosity. And in a way, let us specially pray for the grace that we too may do our actions out of love and generosity, and that above all, our hearts may be filled with this fragrance of consolation and dedication towards the service of others.